Well, hey everybody! I had a good question here. I wanted to respond to. Curtis says, "Hey Clifton, I'm curious about your process for learning new tunes by ear, or more particularly, what that process was like in your earlier banjo journey. Do you get a melody in your head, find the tuning, and then pluck until you find the notes? Do you think to yourself, 'Oh, that's a G,' or do you just recall the sound of a G, etc., etc.?" Um, Well, So earlier in my banjo journey, how did I first learn to figure out songs by ear? Well, there's different layers to it, but you kind of certainly over time you get to where you can pick out like, oh well, that's probably played out of G modal, or that's you hear an old banjo recording and you think, well, I'm sure he's playing out of double C, hook and line tuning, I'm sure. You can just kind of tell. But yeah, like you said earlier in my banjo journey, how did I know? Well, I mean, yeah, a lot of times you have to find, hopefully if it's a recording in the liner notes, of course, there's going to be the tuning should be, if it's good liner notes, it'll have the tuning, or at least the chords or something in there. Um, one nice modern trick you can do that I have done many times if I've just stuck and I can't figure out where to even start, like how to tune the banjo or what chord or whatever to go with. A great trick that I've used many times is get your electric tuner out. And let's say you wanted to learn Lonesome Road Blues or whatever, and you'd start. And what I'll do is I'll take that electric tuner and I'll slowly sing like the opening like tone to that song, Lonesome Road Blues. So how does that go? Like do 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 do. So I would start out by humming. I would hum into that electric tuner, do, and you're probably gonna that's probably a G or an A or whatever, and you'll know that okay, if it comes up a G or an A or an F or something, you can play it at a G tuning. Um, if you're singing the song and it comes and the electric tuner shows an E or a D or whatever, you know it's going to be some dark weird bluesy thing or whatever. Or if it's a bunch of C C C and then it goes to G and then to D seventh, and like those are the chords. So that's a great trick you can do. Get your electric tuner out and find what that is, and whatever. Usually in a song, whatever the first note of the song on the banjo, whatever the first note is usually the same note that music will end with. It'll wrap up on the same string, the same note, and usually that's the basic key of the song. So like Lonesome Road Blues basically opens on the G string, and it ends on the G. I'm sure. And so that was how you would know. You would be able to figure out that Lonesome Road Blues is played out of the key of G. So that's one way you could figure it out. But like the basically like the more like rudimentary way of learning it is just like you listen to it, you come up with your own way of playing it, and maybe it's in the correct key, maybe it's not. A great example is when I learned Going Across the Mountain, the Frank Prophet, from a Frank Prophet recording. Frank Prophet, of course, is a great Watauga County banjo player that we'll have to honor him in a future episode, I'm sure. But I learned from recordings of him Going Across the Mountain, and I didn't know, this was maybe on a tape, like a mixed tape of recordings or something that I learned this from. So I didn't have liner notes to tell me that he was in a totally different tuning and doing all this different stuff. I just play that song out of straight G, D seventh, and then whatever this chord is, E minor or something, I think it is. So I play basically a more straight version of that, plain Jane out of G tuning. But Frank's original version of that song in the recording is played out of a more unusual tuning and a different key. So that's an example of where the song was learned basically totally wrong. But in my opinion, it came out. But my version, I'm very happy with, and I play it, and listeners are very pleased by it. It sounds very old timey and archaic to me, but it's totally different from Frank Prophet's version. So, and that's one of the earlier songs that I came up with. So yeah, that's how it is. I mean, and as far as do I think to myself, oh, that's a G, or oh, that's an A? No, I don't. I don't know any of that stuff. I never learned to read music. I don't know an A from a D. You know, do re mi fa sol la. I don't know any of that. So I don't think in terms of of like the key and like the letter alphabet and stuff. I don't. What I do, I just will I memorize the tone, and what I'm probably best at is I memorize the language, the poetry. I'm pretty good. I'm better with the language than I am with any kind of code based on numbers or letters or whatever, like reading music or something would involve. Uh, yeah, and I've heard many other people say that too, like old timers, you know, like George Gibson and stuff. We'll talk about how, I mean, one of the best ways to learn a song is to learn the words and to sing it. And if you can sing the song and you know all the words forward and backwards and you can sing it and it sounds badass to you when you sing it, you know, it'll be that much easier to figure it out on the banjo. Uh, George once told me that when he's playing the banjo, he's not really thinking in terms of notes, plucks, slides, hammers, and stuff like that in his right hand and his left hand. He's thinking the words, and so I found that interesting, and maybe that's something that I touched on in an earlier video, the in-depth discussion on singing, and we do need to revisit that and talk more about that, and I should start from that point because that makes me want to go off on a whole nother tangent about singing and what's in my mind. You know, what George described to me was in his mind, and what's in my mind when I'm singing. And in summary, you know, George is thinking he pictures he has the poetry and the language in his mind. Usually when I'm singing these old songs, I just have images. I have visuals in my mind of people, places, whatever, that I will see recurring characters and themes that will play in my mind as my hands are playing the music and as my voice is reciting, basically regurgitating this poetry that I have memorized through muscle memory, basically. So the words are basically, for me, just supporting all these images in my mind. And that is why maybe if you look into my eyes when I'm playing a particularly involved ballad or something, you know, you can see that I'm like light years away, like focusing on something else. Like I'm not looking at my hands, like it's hard to explain. So great question, Curtis. Let's see, let's wrap it up. And you had some other parts to your question here. You say that the banjo seems particularly well suited for learning in the oral tradition, in that as a folk instrument, right and wrong seem to go out the window. Yes, definitely. That's a great point to close on. Right and wrong have gone out the window. The moment that you enter this space, you know, this patreon.com/Clifton Hicks, whatever, once you've entered this space, right and wrong in a lot of terms have gone out the window. I'm not interested in that, and I think you guys already know that. I'm interested in tradition, and I'm interested in innovation. I want that tradition to continue to breathe and to develop. That's why just earlier today I shared with y'all that great video of our young associate Jerron Paxton playing Morphine on that great old fretless banjo. Like that, you know, that's great. That's part of the tradition carrying on. That's his own arrangement of a great old song. I love to see that. I want to see more of that. So thanks for watching, and expect more from me in the near future.